So here we are on a Friday morning, and we're eager and anxious to get stuck into the media and the various things that they're saying. Good morning, Pat. Are you
Morning, Jude.
agog to get started?
Oh, absolutely.
I can tell from the expression in your face.
Yes, let's get down to business.
Right. Okay. We won't even engage into chat. We'll just get down to work, as you say. Okay. Now, this was something that you spotted in terms of, I think it was the Irish Times maybe had it, about costs.
Trade. Jude, here's a very simple thing. You know the way some things are like catalyst. My dear wife went over to a certain shop in the waterside area of Derry on Monday.
Yeah.
And she came back and she says, "Pat, by God, she's definitely the shelves are not as full." And you know, it's one of these places where she says there's no dental and there was no sort of kitchen roll and something else. You know, she says, "Pat, this should be normal things you'd find in the shelf." So I came back over. And actually, he was chatting to a friend of mine who's in business in Derry, and he says, "Oh, hey," I said, "Pat, it's definitely the case." He says, "Brexit has definitely started to affect some shops." Now, he named one supermarket, and I'm not going to name it because I'm not 100% certain it's true. He says they have started to get their stuff through the south of Ireland, not from Britain. And he says they have no trouble with their trade lanes. So, Jude, that's starting up now. I looked it up. It says here, exports from Ireland to Great Britain, let me read this to you.
Yeah.
Soared the final 6 months of Brexit, or the first 6 months of Brexit, sorry. According to the Irish Central Statistics Office, exports to Britain up 20%.
Is this from the south?
From the south?
Yeah.
From the south. Well, I'll get the north. These are just a couple of facts. I'm not going to bore you to death with the facts. But exports to Britain from the Republic of Ireland up 20%. But imports from Britain are down 30%, 32% actually. And imports from Northern Ireland to the Republic are up 77%. And in the first 6 months, and exports from the Republic to the North rose by 40%. So Brexit is actually working for Northern Ireland.
Well, it's also working for what the unionists feared, or some unionists feared. It's integrating economically the North and the South. The trade has increased. So I guess that's something for them to worry about. And it'll only, if it is a worry for you, it'll only get bigger. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Jude, apparently, here's the other thing. It's a very strange one. I just had a look at it there the other day. Apparently, Britain is really struggling for lorry drivers. A lot of the drivers between the continent, particularly, a lot of them were apparently Polish and so on. But when along came COVID, there's a combination of COVID and Brexit. A lot of them went home and haven't come back. So there's a whole problem about supply chain, plus the red tape. A lot of apparently EU drivers now just don't want to go to Britain because of all the stuff and so on. And the very, very strange thing, another thing I read the last day, one of the big things that the British thought was because Irish exporters used the land bridge at Dover and various ports there to go to mainland Europe, they thought the EU would impose light touch regulations to ensure an EU country, namely the Republic of Ireland or even Ireland, wouldn't be touched. But what the Irish have done is they have sort of boycotted Britain altogether. They set up their own ferry lanes, and now there's more sailings from Rosslare and Cork and places like that. They're not using Britain half as much. So the old sort of feeling that the Brits had that they could use this as a some sort of stick to beat the EU has actually been got round totally. So Jude, a lot of things are coming home to roost for the Brits in regard to Brexit.
Well, I think you see, Irish unionists say that they had spotted that from the beginning. They saw that this would have an effect on their trade with GB and GB's trade with them, and they saw it have an effect on North-South trade. Of course, the thing they focused on was the difficulties in terms of trade with GB, especially stuff coming over here because there is more red tape. And as a result, that discourages British traders from, engaging with the North. But they tended to avoid talking too much about the increased trade with North and South and South and North, because there'd be a lot of unionist people who would be glad for the extra trade developing. And it's so much handier if you stop to think about it. If you don't have a bloody sea passage that you have to navigate, then it's much easier just to take a lorry and drive it down or drive it up.
I know it's a very strange thing, and it's very purely anecdotal, but myself and my dear wife were bored one morning there about 2 weeks ago, and we ended up in the Sperrins, a very remote part of, and beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I love the place. And anyway, we're up there, and I passed in the course of a morning 3 southern registered lorries. And I thought, wait a minute, one of them was somewhere from Stone. I can't remember the name, someone Stone. And it was it was in the middle of a wee village high up in the Sperrins, and it was from Tipperary North, TN, in a North registration. I was going, what under God is a southern registered lorry doing up here in the middle of nowhere? Jude, I don't know how many people have been into the Sperrins, but it is fairly remote. Over, you end up around Bibberstown, but if you're coming from Donegal, it's, you gone through forests and country lanes and side roads. And to find a southern Tipperary North registered lorry delivering something to a wee village in the middle of nowhere, it was really strange. It was the first time I came across that. But Jude, let me just, imports from Northern Ireland to the Republic are up 77% to 1.8 billion in the first 6 months. Exports from the Republic to the North rose by 40% to 1.6 billion. So Jude, those are up 77% in 6 months.
Those are hard
exports from the North to the Republic.
Yeah, hard economic facts, which I think unionism particularly, everybody will have to digest and live with. This is a related topic, Pat, and it isn't directly connected to this question of increased trade. But I came across an item on cost of living between the South and the UK, or the North in this case. It's quite like, you remember you told me, you made the point that your pensions and your salaries tended to be so much higher in the South rather than the North.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What can you remember offhand what the difference was, or no?
No, Jude, but I'm a cross-border worker, and I am considerably poorer. My pension's considerably poorer than it would be had I spent my time in the South. There's a considerable difference. Jude, I don't know what the old age pension is in the North, but at someone like, is it 100 and something quid? The average pension in the South is 300 and something 20 euros. That's a hell of a difference.
Well, and this was the thing, and I think I mentioned the last time we talked about this. I just checked these figures. The cost of living in the South is 14% higher than in the North.
Yeah.
If you want to go for your groceries, they'll cost you approximately 11% more in the South than in the North. Yeah. When it comes to renting a house, you'll be paying over 50% more. Yeah. So there are some pretty, and I might add finally that when my wife, we were waiting at Karen Ryan yesterday to come back over to Larne, and Maureen went in and got a can of Coke, and she came back out and says, geez, this thing cost 160. And I can't remember the last time I bought a can of Coke, and I can't remember if it was very dear, but it certainly wasn't 1.60. Yeah. Does that sound high to you, or do you know?
No, I'd say that a lot of things have gone up. But Jude, there's one thing I think you've left out. The wage levels in the South are way, way higher than they are in the North. Way higher.
Yeah, but Pat, they need to be if you're going to, if overall the cost of living is 14%.
The economist David McWilliams did a survey, Jude, and I think somewhere there, now Jude, I'm open to correction, and somebody's sure to come on and say, but I remember there was substantial difference. Like the average wage in the North was something like 23,000 sterling. And I think the average wage in the North or the Republic was something like 39,000 euros. Now, okay, you adjust several ways there, but still, that isn't anywhere close.
Yeah, it does look like, if you put it like that, indeed. But again, I was just struck by that fact that the cost of living generally was 14%.
No, I'm not saying there's South Nirvana, far from it, Jude. There's odds, and you're right about the cost, but the what do you call it? The North does seem like a low wage economy.
I suspect that as time goes by and Brexit works its way through, that prices and cost of living and so on will more or less stabilize at an equal point between North and South. If you're having a lot of trade between North and South, chances are that you'll get something closer to the same kind of cost of living. It's an interesting one. Another thing I heard somewhere was that if you were to pay the real price for food in the supermarket, the price would be hugely higher. Apparently, a lot of stuff is subsidized, and governments are fearful of saying anything or offering anything in an election which would suggest that they're going to have prices upped. So, they're unnaturally depressed prices
Well,
is
Jude,
what's
that's where
making
a common
food in our
agriculture
table possible.
policy, yeah, and food subsidies, and farmers were in some parts, well, and right across Europe, in some cases, were getting paid to do nothing. And certain things there were headage payments. There were there was stuff for doing environmental works. Yeah, so I presume there was also stuff to subsidising milk prices and egg prices and whatever, butter prices, whatever you name it.
Yeah. And then the farmers are always complaining. Okay. Right. Let's move along from that to something that's even more immediate, and that is vaccines. I was watching TV last night, and they said that after 2 months, or some study, big study, Oxford, I think it was, after something like 2 months, the Pfizer vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine, their efficacy begins to wane.
Yeah.
And in fact, after something like 2 months, the one that I got, the AstraZeneca, 2 jabs, you're down to something like 61% efficacy.
Yeah.
That's kind of scary. That's almost 50%.
Yeah, it's not great. The only thing is, Jude, they said the plus side of it, and I'm working on the plus side, is they said it gives you, but it still gives you basically the same as if you had got COVID naturally. If you'd got COVID and survived it, it still gives you the same level of protection. The antibodies are there after getting the vaccination. But having said that, it's not exactly cheering news to find out that it's only 61%. I think it's after 90 days, Jude, by the way.
Oh, is it 90 days? Yeah.
90 days. But they're like, does it really matter whether it's 2 months or 3 months? It's,
yeah. But you see, I'm not sure about this thing. If they say that after 90 days, AstraZeneca is down to 61% efficacy, right? Now, that means it's almost 40% of people are susceptible. I'm not sure. I know that there are people who have got to, who have had the virus, but I don't think 40% of those. I don't think the missing 40% wouldn't be the same that they would get it again. Do you follow what I mean?
I don't know. I really can't.
I'm not saying that very well.
I wrote it down. Vaccines still give the same level of protection as having had COVID through natural infection.
So in other words, 40% is missing. In 61% of cases, having the virus or getting vaccinated will protect you in 61% of cases, at least 40% of the time where you could get it again.
Absolutely.
It is on the record, is it? That people.
Yeah, by the way, the one thing they said, it's not peer reviewed. It's only findings from a study. Now, somebody else could come along with another study and sort of say, well, no, wait a minute, But until they have done the comprehensive and peer reviewed it against other studies. Yeah. But this is one study that they have come, and this is the finding. Yeah. So it could change, but it's unlikely to change.
Well, sobering facts you see on the TV tonight. For example, last night, I saw that 9 people had died in the north of coronavirus.
Yeah. It's gone up again, Jude, which is a wee bit frightening.
As for social distancing, you must be kidding. Like they had, we talked about this last week, I think, the park somewhere in the falls, and there was something like 10,000 young people at it.
A failure thing.
Yeah. And there were very few of them masked. There were very few people masked on the boat, the ferry coming across from Scotland yesterday.
Yeah. And the Republic, there was an All-Ireland semi-final there. There was 24,000 people at it. And if you watched the Euro Championships in England, there were very few people wearing masks there. And there was, 30 and 40,000 at those games. Yeah. So
they say that the All-Ireland final, there is an All-Ireland hurling final on Sunday. And then there'll be the semi-final of Tyrone and Kerry the following weekend. And then after a week or two later, you'll have Croke Park. But for the football final, they said 40,000.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't get it. And at those football games you've talked about, the soccer games, people seem to be right beside each other.
Yeah.
There was no social distancing, and I could see very few masks.
Jude, I like Derry's 6 miles up the road, and Letterkenny's about 20 miles up the road. And I have been in both places in the last day, and I see very few people wearing masks.
Yeah. Well, maybe it'll be one of these things that, what's his name? Bill Bryson talks about in his book about the human body. He says he cites cases where somewhere in the States, a mysterious virus will come, it'll kill maybe 200 people over a 6-month period, and then it'll go, just sort of vanish. We don't know. There's so much about it we don't understand. The one other fact that I noticed from that book was, and it really struck me, you know, the way there was some controversy about whether or not this came from bats, you know, jumped the species from bats or animals into human beings. Well, according to Bryson, there are 800,000 potential virus leapers, that is from animals to humans.
Humans, yeah.
Potential. Yeah. Well, we've experienced one of them. If there's another
799 to go. Yeah.
Tough stuff. Well, it just shows you two things: the fragility of life and the minimal amount that people know about so much things that affect us. Anyway, they are £1.60 for a can of Coke, and 800,000 potential virus leapers waiting to get at me. What's the world coming to, for God's sake?
Those are two statistics that shouldn't be run together.
Right. Okay. You want to talk about the Premier League? Who's going to win the league? Is that what you're
No, Jude, we have to talk about Afghanistan.
Oh, flip me. It's a small matter of Afghanistan.
Well, hey, Jude, here's a question for you, Dr. Collins. I didn't ask you beforehand.
Yeah.
Do you know what the war in Afghanistan was about?
I suspect I do. I know the official reason they gave for it. Official reason they gave for it was that Afghanistan was sheltering your man that arranged 9/11.
Osama bin Laden.
Osama bin Laden. A name we'd never heard, and then everybody had heard it. However, I was doing a little bit of background research. My wife said, you know, if you're going to talk about this, why don't you talk about some of the things that aren't normally talked about? So I did a bit of digging, and I found that in Afghanistan, there are, in terms of resources of copper, for example, there are $88 billion worth of copper to be mined. Yeah. It's the second biggest center for copper in the world. Gold and copper in the province of Ghazni is alone worth 50 billion. They have, now you might say, of course, that this doesn't matter so much, but don't forget, when they invaded Afghanistan was 20 years ago, not now. There is 1,596 million barrels of crude oil that hasn't been tapped, and there are 444 billion cubic meters of natural gas. So at the time they invaded, those would have been hugely valuable. Now, I know that people are supposed to have a conversion to, you know, renewable resources, but that way I'd be certain that thing for copper, that thing for gas, that thing for oil would have been factors in it. I think there's other complications involved anyway, but that'd be my guess, that they went after Osama bin Laden because it was a huge propaganda coup for him doing that. And if he was in Afghanistan, they're going to try to find him. They kept on trying, and it's sort of like getting lucky, you know.
They found him in Pakistan, But Jude, you know something. Hey, Jude, I would sort of disagree with nearly all of that. Not for any reason, because what you're saying is highly intelligent and very good. But here's the point: like, I even remember a film about 40 years ago, Carry On Up the Khyber. The Brits were in Afghanistan. The Russians have been in Afghanistan. The Americans have been in Afghanistan. No, it's unrulable and unrulable. There's so many tribes and so much. And nobody will ever be able to get stuff out of the ground there, because the pipeline will be attacked. There will be all the rest of it. The place is basically ungovernable and so on. But you'd look, I was sitting down and said, apparently the rough estimate is, since the war started, it has cost the global powers, mainly the Americans, $2.3 trillion since this war started. I know there's about 3,500 coalition troops. I think about 3,200 of them Americans dead. God knows how many injured. And they left the last day, and you're sort of going, what was that about? Tony Blair, George Bush, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, like, they've left the people behind them. And I'm going, what was achieved? What was the point of it? And here we are now. And by the way, the West, if that's the right term, we are totally immoral when it comes to politics. We have left those poor people in Afghanistan now to the tender mercies of the Taliban. All those people who helped the Western powers, who worked for the Americans, who worked for the Brits, who tried to make a living, you'll find some of them crucified alive on the street corners in the next couple of weeks and so on.
Well, I would agree largely with what you say. However, I'd put in one reminder, and that is that the Taliban live in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
The Americans don't, nor the
Absolutely,
Russians,
I agree with you.
nor
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
others. So to that extent, the Taliban, have
Right, Jude,
in a sense,
here's another point.
right on
Jude,
the side.
sorry for
Right
going
on the
across you
side in that
again.
sense.
Where have you checked out the House of Saud, the Saudi Arabians,
Yeah.
and the Taliban? The difference is about nil. Why is one acceptable and the other? By the way, I'm deadly serious.
Yeah, well,
when they behead people in public, they have
Yes.
public executions. They have chop square where they cut off hands. They are absolute fundamentalist, Muslim, Islamic. So why are one fated and brought in by Donald Trump to America and state visits and all the rest? What's the difference between them and the Taliban?
well, I think one is that it's neatly governed. You know, it may have ghastly practices, but it is governed. And I think the thing that drove it to be governed was the fact that they had all that oil.
Yeah.
And that's what encouraged the US and others to form sort of agreements with them in terms of oil production. But I think we shouldn't forget the fact that the Taliban are Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Afghanistanis.
Yeah.
Whereas the other people aren't. The second thing I would say is these poor people, and I mean, I would have sympathy with them. I mean, there's some of them are going to almost certainly end in a terrible way. But it's kind of like here, you know, the invader was the American.
Yeah.
The Taliban were the resistors.
Yeah.
Those who supported the invader, I mean, it shouldn't come as a shock to them that one day the Americans are going to pull out. And it shouldn't come as a shock to them one day or another that the Afghanis are going to find, or the Taliban are going to find out you were working for the invader, weren't you? And then do something.
Jude, right, God, tell me, if you're Tony Blair this morning, what would you be thinking? Like, Jude, what was the possible rationale for going into Afghanistan? But it's nearly 400 British troops dead, maybe more, I'm not 100% certain, maybe even 450. It cost them somewhere about 30 billion at a time in a world recession.
But Pat, they had to. The Americans had
Jude,
to.
hold on a minute. What do you mean they had to?
Well, think of the time. Whenever you had the Twin Towers go down on live time television, so to speak, they simply had to do a spectacular response in terms of finding the people or even pretending to find the people.
But Jude, they were Saudi fucking Arabians, pardon the language. The guys, they knew where the guys came from on the planes. It got nothing to do with Afghanistan.
Yes, well, I would factor in, you see, the fact that there were all those resources. I find it difficult to believe all that oil, all that gas, all that copper. The Americans didn't notice that when they were invading or deciding to invade.
But hold on, Jude, nobody's ever got that out of the ground or out of the sea around Afghanistan. There's no sea in Afghanistan, not as far as I remember.
Well, that could be part of it, all right. It's difficulty because it is terrible terrain, I gather. But, you know, I think where there's a will, there's a way. And if you had enough, if they'd done it, if they had maybe played the game better than they did, they could make up their mind whether they were going in to squash terrorism as they saw it or to build a nation. So they're sort of caught between the two.
Tony Blair was just basically slicking the Americans.
He was a lapdog. He was an American lapdog. So of course he followed them. And you could go on about it for a long time. I just think if the Americans, they've made much of the fact that they had trained the Afghani army. They did a very poor job of it, is all I can say.
What did they say? Joe Biden and the Americans figured it would take the Taliban 90 days to reach Kabul. It took them less than 90 hours.
Well, they say, you know, I read a report that suggested that the Americans didn't even trust their Afghan allies.
No.
In other words, the government of Afghanistan, they didn't trust them. They didn't tell them when they were going to be leaving.
Yeah.
I think the sign
The
was,
government are totally corrupt, Jude. Apparently, what Kaisi or apparently, like they're like sort of warlords, and their corruption levels. They stole the money and the food from their own troops. The commanders were given money to pay the troops, didn't pay them. They took the money from the Americans. What a whole lot of American Land Rovers and armored cars went missing. All the rest of it, and it's corruption on a grand scale.
just a different way of working, Pat. I don't know. Well, we call it corruption, and it is according to our standards. But I mean, for example, in Africa,
Yeah.
in many of the countries in Africa, it's the idea of a backhander is part and parcel of the way of life. It was part and parcel of the way of life here as well. I had no doubt it's still going on to some degree. So, you know, maybe we just have to accept that as good. I think there's one final thing I would say, and that is, Danny Morrison, I think it was, had a tweet on this. They're finding it the Americans are finding it very, very difficult to utter 3 words. They've said a lot of things about their withdrawal, but they didn't say 3 words that they should have said. We were beaten. I mean, it was Vietnam all over again. It was
Vietnam exactly all over again. Yeah.
Guys, you know, falling off or trying to climb aboard the planes, just like they were trying to climb onto the helicopters.
Helicopters, yeah. I know one of them was an 18 or 19-year-old young footballer, an international footballer. He fell off the plane and was killed. You know, the other day. Here's
one final thought my conspiracy-ridden mind puts up, and I don't quite understand it. You know that famous shot where this big plane's leaving or trying to take off, or you know, taxiing onto the runway, and there's hundreds of people running around it and
trying to get on it.
Yeah. At one point, one of those guys doing the running waves to the camera.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Did you notice that?
I saw that. Yeah.
Well, what was that about? There would be no chance, would there, that there was something stage managed about that?
Jude, I know someone, what do you call it? Some of the cameramen, you know, some of the reporters, Jude, I don't know. They could have said, look, we'll give you a tenner if you do that. Who knows, Jude? I don't know. Like there was on the north, there were all sorts of. There were years ago. There was a certain reporter was famous for offering kids money to get them to riot and throw stones at the passing British Army so they could get photographs of it. You know?
Yeah, I did. I've heard about those, but you would probably be closer to the scene of action than me. But it's sort of terrible. Like I'm sure those people were actually there because they were trying to get on the plane. But it looked a bit odd.
Staged.
I mean, once they close the door and the plane's beginning to move, I'd sort of give up at that point.
I think I would give up because
they were sort of running alongside it as if like one of these cowboy movies.
The guy, even if you're Dick Fosbury, remember the Fosbury flap? There's no way you're going to jump 30 feet into a cockpit, is there?
Pat, we're talking in a very frivolous way. These poor people and their suffering.
Oh no, Jude. I actually, Jude, I'm not kidding you. I watched it and I thought it was heartbreaking. I actually got really angry about it. I thought, here we're sitting watching poor people getting upset, and the Americans coming on, Joe Biden, who has gone down big time in my estimation, saying we did nothing wrong, and that was Donald Trump. Yeah, there was Donald Trump's there, but Jude, the Americans have gone in and the Brits have gone in, and they've left the country now, and there'll be people now paying a terrible price for their arrogance and whatever other word, what is it, hubris, or whatever word you want to use.
Yeah, but everybody must have known they're going to leave eventually. I just think they hoped that it would be in a handing over to an ordered state. And the guy who would have taken over would probably been corrupt in no time. Anyway, I was going to make some final point about that now, but it slipped my mind. Oh yes, what do you do? As I was saying, you gotta if the Twin Towers were taken down in the spectacular fashion they were, you've got to make some big gesture. So that was our big gesture. The other more general point is the army and the Air Force, I suppose, in the States must cost a mint to run.
Yeah,
absolutely. It must cost so much, the funding for them each year. If you've got an army that doesn't fight, eventually the taxpayers are going to say, what the hell are we paying this money for? This is insane. So the whole thing of the army and its existence and the training and the pride in the men and all the rest of it, that could be in question. So
Yeah.
you've got every so often, you've got to send them out somewhere. So there's blood and guts, and they do a great job, and some make the supreme sacrifice. And those who survive, we say thank you for your service.
Yeah. Jude, I think it was the Iraq War. One Saturday here, we must have been on a flight path. Now, I'd gone down that morning, and it cost me something like €70 to get me diesel filled. And the space of about 2 or 3 hours, the big heavy planes went past. They must have been on a flight path. And I presume they were American planes heading out over, the Atlantic, heading, or wherever the hell they were. It wouldn't be the Atlantic, but anyway, it doesn't matter. And about 10, 15 planes, big heavy planes, and I'd say they were using thousands upon thousands of liters of fuel going out there. And I thought to myself, imagine the cost just of that.
Mm-hmm.
Just even getting there.
Yeah.
And like Jude, I wrote it down because I knew I'm useless at figures. It says the bill for Afghanistan for everybody is somewhere in about $2.2 trillion.
Yeah. I saw a guy in the Irish Times this morning suggested in the letters page, in fact, a man from your own county, a doctor John, was it Gallagher? Something like that. From Gweedore said that amount of money, that's what it cost them, 2.26 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Dollars. He said, wouldn't it have been a better investment to have given every household in Afghanistan $500,000?
Ah, exactly.
Would it work, do you think?
No, it wouldn't have worked because the corruption there is so unbelievable. But I take the point he was making.
I take his point. Okay, let's hurry on to the last of these, the Premier League, which is going to keep us from thinking other bad things. And I will put in a wee word for the GAA football as well. But the Premier League, who's going to win it, Pat? Quickly, you've 10 seconds.
I'd say Manchester City. Apparently, they've already made another bid for Harry Kane on top of Jack Grealish. So when you can buy, somebody said another 100 million, and Pep Guardiola will be another genius. In other words, he's just bought another team.
I think it's more than that. I think he's more than that. I think he's well, from what we're told, he was the guy that sort of invented the tic-tac-toe or whatever.
Hold on. He was not. He gets the credit for it, but you know who invented the tic-tac team? Johan Cruyff. Johan Cruyff, the whole Barcelona success. He invented this, where within 2 seconds you get in the ball, you get rid of it, and if the other team got it, you got it back within 5 seconds.
So that was Cruyff. That was good.
That was Cruyff.
Pep Guardiola was on the side. He was training for that.
Exactly. That's where. But now, in fairness to Pep, he took it to a new level.
Aye. And he also changed it because we don't have tic-tac-toe or whatever anymore. We have the press. And I gathered that
Jack Charlton was nearly the first. He described it as put them under pressure. And it was considered. Hold on, Dr. Collins. It was considered.
You're wrong.
You're wrong, Megard. No, Collins, as usual, you take the side of the establishment.
Go on.
All right, where am I wrong? Where am I wrong?
Yes.
All right, go on. Tell me where I'm wrong.
I forgot. There's so many things that you say that are wrong. I can't keep up with them all. What was the last one?
No, but you were suggesting that Jack Charlton.
Jack Charlton. No, you suggested Jack Charlton. I'm saying Jack Charlton wasn't an example of the press. It was an example of the long ball.
That's why I disagreed with you. Yeah.
The long ball. Well, you could say that puts him under pressure. He did use that expression. That's true. But it wasn't the pressure in the sense of the press. The notion, my way I understand the press is the entire team moves forward as one unit pressing the opposition. It's not that you hook a ball from near your own goal to near the goals.
No, Jack Charlton did more than that. He just didn't, Kevin Moran or Paul McGrath just didn't kick it up the front.
And we're good footballers, but it wasn't that kind of United. You watch Shaq, you know what I'm talking about perfectly well. Man City and Liverpool, the way they move up together, and it's a team. It's a total team effort.
Right, we better wrap this up. Who do you think's going to win the Premier League?
I think Liverpool. I also would say in brackets maybe Man City and maybe even Man United, God forbid. But well, mind you, you say Man City, and they're getting all these wonderful players. But don't forget, Kevin Keegan had a team that was winning the league up in
Newcastle.
And what did he do? He got this genius of a guy from South America who was a bit of a gangster, but an amazing footballer, and the whole thing fell apart. So he introduced as a cog that wasn't needed into the machine. So it might well be that Harry Kane or Jack Grealish would be the extra thing in the wheel that'll run the whole.
Makes it fall off.
It could. I wouldn't be surprised. I strongly say, well, the fact is they lost their first game, and Liverpool emphatically won their first game. And do you remember last year and the year before? I think it was the team that got the lead and put a gap between themselves and the rest. That it was very, very hard for them to catch up. So let's say that Liverpool have made a good start, and Man City made not so good a start.
No, you're right. I like Klopp, the manager. He reminds me somewhat of Ferguson and Shankly. No other way he fits players into the system. He doesn't go just buying anybody. Like he bought Mo Salah and somebody said Virgil van Dijk. Who's he? And he turned out to be the best player. He worked on, and like that's, and it's sort of done nicely. And it's not like he just doesn't go for Jack Grealish. Let's spend 100 million for a marquee player, and then it looks great. He goes for the player that fits his system.
See, I had fears about Jack Grealish. They all say that he's going to make Pep Guardiola is going to make him a really good player. I'm not totally sure about that. It's just I don't. He played the first game rather, and I mean he was okay, but I mean I wouldn't have dreamed of paying 100 million for him under the terms of that how he performed that day.
I mean, it's so good. Why didn't Southgate play him for England all the time?
Well, there you are. You see, he didn't fit in again. Anyway, that's a foreign game, Pat. We shouldn't be talking about a foreign game.
Anyway, as Tyrone going to, by the way, there was a great, hey Jude, I have to admit, I think I told you last week, I deliberately didn't watch the Mayo Dublin game. And it's one of my big regrets. There's a very simple reason. I've sat and watched Mayo lose, and it's so depressing watching Dublin just roll over them every time. But the last day at the half time, when I heard that I think Dublin were 6 points up, I said, bollocks, I'm not going to bother watching it. And to discover then that Mayo had won was one of the great joys of my life.
Well, yeah, you can set yourself up for another piece of mental anguish for the All Ireland, because whether it's Tyrone or whether it's Kerry comes through, Mayo are going to lose again. I can tell you now. And I hate to say it, but I have a horrible feeling that Tyrone's in for an awful hiding when Kerry gets at them. The way things are going. Anyway, those are joys to look forward to as the evenings darken, and as we sit at home watching the telly. Like cavemen used to watch.
What?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I said on that cheerful note, thanks very much.
I was going to say, as the cavemen used to sit in their caves and watch their own shadows flit on the back of the walls of the cave, that's what we'll be doing, huddling down and watching the shadows that flicker across our screens. Okay, Pat, thank you very much.
All the best, Jude. Good luck.